Okay, so we're nice to each other if it's for the common good, but we can be proactive. We can kill if we feel it's justified.
Yes, it's a slightly sort of galling interpretation of humans to think that natural selection has favored in us this capacity to be brutal to each other when it pays us to do so. But that is the way evolution is prepared to work, of course. It doesn't always make us better in every possible way. And we are somewhat similar to our cousins, the chimpanzees, much more so than to bonobos, with regard to proactive aggression. The difference is that we are able to whisper among each other, to talk and develop a conspiracy and an agreement that somebody that we mutually disapprove of really deserves to die. And even nowadays, of course, we do that. Capital punishment is something that still continues in some societies. And we don't necessarily think of it as aggressive because it is cold and it doesn't necessarily involve any kind of emotion. But from the point of view of evolution, to kill is thoroughly aggressive.
Of course, we also have the prison system, which isolates people without killing them. But again, it's a punishment of some kind.
Yes. I mean, nowadays we use proactive aggression through our police and through our military to do all sorts of things that make society safer without actually killing.
So what was the tipping point in our evolution that brought about our, as you say, self-domestication?
I feel convinced that the really critical feature was the ability of people to use language in such a sophisticated way that they could overcome the great difficulties of proposing that someone deserved to be killed and then devising a plan. And these were really difficult issues because when you first start thinking about something so drastic as conspiring to kill somebody, you don't know that the people that you're proposing this to might disagree with you, in which case they might turn the conspiracy against you and you might turn out to be the victim. It's a very delicate balance. So you've got to be able to use language in a very sophisticated way. And that is, to me, the critical feature that distinguishes our ability to use proactive aggression, planned aggression. It distinguishes our ability from that of any other animal.
If this is an evolutionary trait that we've adapted, then how does this manifest itself in our emotions, our sense of morality?
The curious thing about humans is that, unlike any other species, in our ordinary groups in small-scale societies, there is no such thing as an alpha male. And all the other primates that live in groups of several breeding individuals, you find that the males compete with each other and one of them ends up as the top dog. And in humans, the absence of this, it's fairly clearly explained. And much as I was indicating, no male can afford to be thoroughly aggressive to everybody else, fighting to become the top, because in the end he is brought down by a coalition of the disadvantaged, of the other males. Now, once that coalition of beta males, as it were, had discovered sometime, say, 300,000 years ago, that they were able to control even the most violent and most aggressive and most domineering and despotic of males, then, of course, they realized that they could control anybody. So two processes, I think, then happened. One is the self-domestication that I described, where you get a loss of the genes underlying the propensity for reactive aggression, and so everybody becomes nicer. But the other process is that the coalition of the beta males were able to apply their social power, ultimately the threat of being able to kill anybody, to making sure that everybody in the group behaved in ways that suited those males. And to be a nonconformist is dangerous. It paid everybody to conform to the group interests. This was wonderful in all sorts of ways because it meant that everybody cooperated. But on the other hand, it had rather a sort of dark origin.
I guess you're saying we've kind of evolved so that our leaders are not people who have reactive aggression, where they're big and strong and personally violent and beat up their rivals. Instead, they might be people capable of proactive aggression, cold, calculating, impersonal, kind of institutional violence.
Yes, of course, the alpha males, as we often call people nowadays, presidents and leaders of all sorts of organizations, are different from the alpha males of the type that I've been talking about, because the contemporary type, the Adolf Hitlers and the presidents and prime ministers of today, are individuals who achieve their power through politics, not through personal individual fighting, which does lead to the accumulation of power, and that power is used in ways that very often are sadly explicable in evolutionary terms.
You say in your book that the Holocaust wasn't inhuman, that it was deeply human.
I guess the problem of humans is that we have this dichotomy. We have both this wonderful ability to get on with each other on an ordinary day-to-day basis, and at the same time, we can never escape from the fact that where people have absolute power over others, then they very easily use it. So, thank you for pointing out, as it were, that when people say that genocide is inhuman, it's really the opposite. Genocide is appallingly human. It's only one side of us. So the message from this analysis of the understanding of the goodness paradox is that we should never forget that in order to be able to control the potential for violence in humans, we need to keep the social institutions that have been built up over historical time and that really do work. If we go back to a time when people are free to do what they want, then that's when you get male-based militias fighting with each other and causing tremendous violence everywhere.
Dr. Wrangham, thank you for the book, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Dr. Richard Wrangham is a professor of biological anthropology at Harvard University and the author of a new book, The Goodness Paradox: The Strange Relationship Between Virtue and Violence in Human Evolution.